Oh, hi everyone. It's Saturday, September 6th at 12:29 p.m. and I promised that we would get back to W19 and W20 and see how they fared after 1 week. So let's take a look. And here's W19. And neither of these have had water now since last Saturday. And there is a difference. But the surprising thing with W19, with all the destruction to the roots that it had, is that the buds are starting to open, which is a good sign. I don't know if that will last. One never knows. There's always surprises. We have a bud blast here, bud blast there, not surprising. And this one might open. And this one here is about to open. So this is a sign of stability, not stasis, but the plant has now, it's on stable ground, let's put it that way. And that's because it's no longer being subjected to overwatering and has had a chance to take a breather. So I noticed after 3 days that the majority of the roots had, begun to shrivel up. And I alerted you to that fact at the end of the last video. So let's take it out of the vase and get a better look. And it's like, yikes. So these roots were incapable of sustaining themselves and incapable of retaining water. And if I had continued to water them, they would have just rotted in time. And these are bad roots. The roots that are left, and there are very few of them, which I'll show you later after I cut away these old ones, you'll see that they can sustain themselves and they can hold water, and they'll be, hard when you squeeze them. Meanwhile, the damage to this leaf has begun to localize, and it's turning colors now. It's getting a darker color. It'll eventually turn black, and that area of the leaf will kind of shrivel up, but the leaf will continue to grow. And let's take a look at W20 now. And unlike W19, where we've probably lost 75% of the roots, I would say most, if not all of these, have gone unscathed. And this has been a week without water now. So that's the test to see if you have good roots or bad roots that are incapable of functioning properly. And as far as good roots go, don't forget our experiments with Orchid R3. If you remember, it originally went without water for 35 days. And then after that period, I soaked it for 2 hours and removed all the moss from the root ball. And then after that, it sat for another 24 days without water until I began the next experiment using R3. And throughout that whole experience, there was no real damage to the roots. And the leaves maintained a good part of their rigidity. So the leaves on W20 and W19 are in very good shape, and there's no problem with that. And the flowers, you have to admit, they look much better on W20. It doesn't look like there are going to be any bud blasts. I mean, these buds look great. The flowers look really great. W20's flowers, not so much. They just don't look as energetic. Looks like they've closed a little bit. But the encouraging feature again is that some of these buds are trying to bloom. And since there are very few viable roots now with W19, the task of supporting the flowers, new leaves, new roots are going to fall on these leaves that are already here. And you might be asking, well, why didn't you just keep watering it? And I already answered that question for you by showing you the destruction to the new leaf and all the destruction that we saw initially with the roots. And I've also gone through the same experience with other orchids that I've been managing. One such case was my wife's, and I even posted a video about this one. And it was on July 9th that we bought it. Maybe I bought it on July 8th, I can't remember, but it was a beauty, and we had real high hopes for it. So we brought it home, and wouldn't you know, after 3 days, the flowers started wilting and the buds started blasting. And my wife was really concerned. She really liked this orchid, and she said, what can we do? And against my better judgment, we started watering it. And as a result, the orchid never had a chance to really stabilize. So all the flowers just fell off, and all of the buds just burst, or blasted, as we say. And we were left with a similar situation with probably half the roots gone in this case. And there was a clue I had missed with this orchid. And if I had seen this at the store, maybe I would have been more wary. But if you look at this top leaf, there's that same kind of damage from overwatering that occurs. And then if you look at this leaf here, a portion of that leaf had rotted away. So those were really good indicators of the fact that something was up. So there's a big difference then between not letting a plant that's been overwatered stabilize by letting it dry out, and in the case of W19, letting it dry out and stabilize. And what I found in the past with 5 or 6 of these orchids in the same predicament is that if you let them stabilize, yes, you will lose some flowers, some buds might blast, but then you're left with maybe 6 flowers instead of 10 flowers, and that kind of situation. And then after stabilizing like that, those flowers could last for 2 to 3 months. Another orchid in a similar situation to these that I had success with was one that I posted about on July 6th. As you can see, when I bought it, it had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 5 or 6 flowers, and then it had at least 6 more buds. So this orchid began flowering in June, right, of 2025. And now here it is today, and I'm pleased to say there wasn't one bud blast. Some of the flowers were lost, just that naturally happens. You never can tell what's going to happen in that respect. But these flowers have been hanging on now since probably the beginning of June, and it's doing really well. Leaves are still in good shape. So that's one of the success stories. As far as the roots go, I probably lost 10 to 20% of them. But there's so many good roots here that it was able to sustain itself really well. And this brings up now a question of watering. What exactly do I do with a plant like this? And what I'll do, I'm on a weekly schedule. So what I'll do is I'll fill it up to about halfway, so it's nowhere near the core, because I have this long bottom root here, and maybe I'll just get the tips of these. And you can just leave that there. You can water it at sunrise and then dump the water, at dinner time or after 5 to 7 hours passes. Doesn't really matter. And that's what I've been doing since I've had it. And it's really holding on nicely. And with W20, it's a very similar situation where I can just water up to about here. That's probably what I'll do, because it hasn't been watered for a week now. It could easily go for another week. These roots are in great condition. But I will water it today. Well, actually, I'll water it on Monday, because my watering days are Monday and Friday. So like I said, I'll water it probably about a third of the way up and water it around sunrise and let it sit until about dinner time, and then just dump the water out. And that's what I'll do on a weekly basis. Now, once you get a situation like this with R3, where all the roots are touching the bottom of the vase, what you can do every week is spray in an ounce of water. And then check it at dinner time. If there's any water left, just dump it out. Because the orchid will probably take in no more than, 0.7 ounces in that time. And then getting back to our bruised W19, I'm going to treat this just like I treat my wife's now. I'm going to, actually, it's in much worse condition than my wife's. My wife, at least, it has a lot of viable roots here, although they're kind of stubby and there's no growth happening yet. But when I get done with W19 and removing all the shriveled up roots, there isn't going to be much left. So after the roots are trimmed, there aren't going to be many roots left, and I'm going to treat it like a normal ICU case. And every couple of days, just like I do my rootless orchids, I'll put in that rooting powder and water it up to here, covering all the roots and trying to stimulate the growth of new roots. And just soak it for 30 minutes to 45 minutes every 48 hours, meaning every 2 days. And you just get on a schedule like that, and it really works. In the meantime, with this 2-day soaking cycle for 30 minutes, hopefully water will be getting to the leaves from the remaining viable roots that are there. And as a result, these beautiful flowers won't be sacrificed. So we'll see. I have a feeling that it's, it's stable now, and I've seen this many times before. So I've trimmed the roots, or the dead roots, that is, the shriveled up one, and these are the viable roots that we have left now. And soaking this every 2 days, I think it's going to work out just fine. So that's it for today, folks. We've killed a few birds with one stone. I've been meaning to, get back and do updates on these other orchids, and just haven't had the time. So today presented a good opportunity to do that in, and so I'm glad I did it. And I hope you learned something from watching this video. Okay, take care.